What is up, YouTube? It's Steve from the Warp Zone, and welcome to my first ever video game review. And I figured, what better game to bring in my first review than one of the a successor to one of my favorite series of all time, the Mario series. And this is Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U. And yes, this is in fact a true sequel to the mainline Mario series, the true 3D series. And actually, Nintendo has recently sort of split the two Mario series into two separate franchises. You have the 2D old school sort of arcadey stuff on the one side, the new Super Mario Brothers games, and now you have the mainline Mario series. I use that term in quotes because I actually prefer the 2D Mario games, but I would actually contend that this game sort of takes the best elements of the 2D and the 3D games and merges them into a great game. And what I mean by that is the basic fundamental elements of the game sort of adhere to that 2D style, but in a 3D space. What I mean by that is it's sort of fast-paced like the 2D stuff. There's the return of multiplayer, which is the first 3D multiplayer Mario game, by the way. And on top of that, not only is it multiplayer, but, it's not cheapened in the sense that there's, that Nintendo just kind of threw out two Toads for the third and fourth players that look and function the exact same. It now goes back to the primo 2D Mario, the pinnacle of the 2D stuff, or multiplayer stuff, which is Super Mario Brothers 2, where you had Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Peach, all separate characters with all different game mechanics, and they all sort of work in their own way and have their own strengths and weaknesses. Mario is the all-around character, sort of the jack of all trades. He's not outstanding or bad at any one aspect. Luigi is a little bit slower, but he jumps higher. Peach can use her dress to float, which in this game, by the way, proves very helpful. And Toad is the speedy, more nimble sort of character. But basically, the game just takes everything that's ever been good from Mario series and sort of combines it into one. Like I just mentioned, the multiplayer aspects are phenomenal. It takes that sort of competitive nature of New Super Mario Brothers U and New Super Mario Brothers Wii, adds more to that, fleshes it out more. You can compete with each other, and that it spits out scores for you at the end of each level, which is really a cool feature. So you can kind of joke around and goof off with your buddies and fight for the highest score. There's even a crown that Nintendo gives you after every level for the winner, whoever got the highest score. But at the same time, you're helping each other out, and you're all trying to beat the stage at the end of the day. So it shares that with the new Super Mario Brothers, in that it's sort of cooperative and competitive at the same time. But it sort of takes that to another level. So basically, you got the really fun sort of arcadey style multiplayer of the 2D games, the new Super Mario Brothers franchise, and it merges it with the fleshed out, aesthetically pleasing, horsepower-ridden 3D games of the modern era, like Mario 64, Mario Galaxy. This is sort of one of my least favorite Mario games. I don't like to mention it too much, but Sunshine. And this, I would say, is the best 3D Mario game since Super Mario 64. It is that good. And the reason for it is based solely, or mainly, on the multiplayer. Of course, the graphics are tightened up hugely. It uses the Wii U's power greatly. The game looks really vibrant, really crisp. I mean, hell, HD Nintendo, what can you say? It just looks awesome. And HD Mario especially, everything just looks so vibrant and just jumps out at you. Despite it not actually being 3D, but you know what I mean. It looks so realistic, despite it being such a fantasy-ridden Mario world. It's very, very great looking. And I'm not going to talk too much about the graphics, because I'm not really huge on that aspect of games. But another factor of the game that really brings it up for me is the control scheme. It's really solid. It's really tight, and there's very few flaws. And Nintendo sort of went out of their way to incorporate every one of their control schemes in this, so whatever your preference in controls, you can basically use it. You got the Wii Remote you can use if you want to just go completely old school style like NES. You can attach the nunchuck and sort of go Mario Galaxy style controls, and which, by the way, the game does sort of control like Galaxy. You got the complexity of the long jumps and the triple jumps and all that stuff, Mario 64 style. But you can sort of tone it down if you want at the same time and just go sort of 2D style controls on this game. Although I will say the D-pad functionality, like if you're just trying to move around with the D-pad, that can be a little tricky to get used to because you're using a sort of 2D style controller in a 3D space, which is a little weird. But like I said, going back to the diversity and how that helps, you don't have to use that if you don't want to. If it feels weird, obviously, since Nintendo's toting the gamepad stuff, you can use the gamepad. You can, in fact, play off TV on the screen alone, which is really cool. And you can use, if you sort of want to go N64 or GameCube style, you can also use the classic controller or the Pro controller if you happen to be one of the few people that owns that. But, yeah, control is really solid, really responsive. It's a little tricky if you haven't played the 3D stuff to sort of get used to that movement in the 3D space, but if you are even a novice of the 3D Mario games, you will have very little problem just delving right into this game. I've played with friends who are really new to Mario games in general, let alone the more complex 3D Mario games, and they had very little trouble getting into it. So, graphics solid, controls even more solid, gameplay is a blast. The game, I will say, ends a little too quickly. There's the typical 8 worlds. I've gotten through most of the game in a pretty brief amount of time, but at the same time, I was not going for the 3 green stars in each level, and if you don't know what that is, it's sort of the equivalent of the 3 stars in the new Super Mario Brothers games. They're placed sporadically, like strategically through each level. There's 3 stars. Some of them are just kind of sneaky, hard to find. Some of them are easy to find, but maybe hard to reach. So, getting my minor grievance with the game out of the way quickly, I would say the game is a little too easy unless you're going for all these green stars. Now, if you're going for all the green stars, that's when the game picks up in difficulty. But there are certain people out there that don't really care that much about that, just want to beat the game, delve right into it, burn through it, get to the final boss. And to those people, they might find the game a little bit lacking just because there's not a lot that gets in your way. There's the typical, there's the Goombas and the Koopa Troopas and all that stuff, but those enemies are sort of designed more for a 2D space, and you find yourself a lot more easy to avoid them if you want to, anyways, in the 3D games. And that leads me to the newest power-up, which Nintendo is really running with in this game, and that's the cat suit. And if you wear the cat suit throughout the game, it becomes even easier, but at the same time, it's a lot more fun to play as, too. It's a little bizarre, kind of weird. It's almost funny to an extent, like the characters meow at the end of the game. It's really weird, but in a good way. You can climb up walls, you can just sort of scratch your opponents, take out Goombas instantly. So you almost feel overpowered in a sense, and that again brings me back to my biggest grievance with the game, my biggest issue is it's a little too easy, ends a little too quickly, but like I said, if you want to go back and get all the collectibles, there's stamps, by the way, that you can incorporate in the Miiverse posts, which is another good feature, by the way. The Miiverse functionality is used really cool in a really great way. You can brag about your accomplishments if you're one of those, gloaters. I beat the game and I beat this level in, X amount of time, etc. But that's a minor part of the game, really. But there's a lot of collectibles in the game, and it's really cool. So if you're going for all those, I would say the game would probably last you maybe 20 hours max. If you're just burning through it straight through beginning to end, you don't care about the stars, anything like that, you don't care about the stamps, you could probably beat it in about 10 hours. So there is that issue that brings it down a little bit in my book. But at the end of the day, I can't knock it too hard for it being too easy if it's still fun to play, and it is. It's a blast to play. You feel like you're going back, at least I can only speak for myself, but I felt like I was going back to playing Mario 64 for the first time. I was wowed by the HD graphics, playing the Mario game in 3D. There's really a lot to explore. It's less linear than the Galaxy games, which is a huge plus in my books, because although the Galaxy games were really polished and well made in their own way, they had the really like elaborate orchestral music. They were sort of lacking on the actual gameplay front and the mechanics. They were a little linear. You're kind of bouncing from one tiny planet to the next. This one sort of fleshes out the worlds a little more. You have a little more room to explore, while still more linear than Mario 64. It's getting close to that level. And like I said, the multiplayer aspects make up for any of the issues I just laid out. It's a whole nother level of fun if you plan on playing this game with friends. So I'm going to do something I wouldn't normally do with my reviews, which is divide the score into two separate categories, since it's really a very different experience on the single and the multiplayer. So before I give it the final score, though, I'm trying to think of anything I might have missed. Basically, the cat suit, like I said, awesome. There's the raccoon suit and a lot of homage to the classics there. Nintendo sort of goes retro in that respect, but at the same time, they make it new again. The fire flowers are really cool to see, like, really helpful, easy to use. What else? Oh, another grievance, a minor grievance again, but doesn't take away from the game so much, but it sort of cheapens it to me a little bit. When you die a certain amount of times, Nintendo sort of goes into like feel bad for you mode, and they throw you this like golden raccoon tail if you play the 3DS game. You know what I mean? But it's basically just super powered. You can like fly through the entire stage. You're invincible basically, and that to me cheapens it up a little bit and makes an already easy game even easier. And I could see why Nintendo was doing that. They're trying to reach out to a mass market audience, make people less intimidated who want to jump in for the first time. But you sort of feel like you never have to like really just buckle down and get through the game, where you can just back up and say, well, if I want to, I could just get this golden feather or golden raccoon tail, whatever, and just march my way to the end of the game. So in that sense, you feel kind of like you're not really, there's no reason for you to like really try and beat the game. So again, it doesn't take away from the game. It's more of a philosophical issue to me, in that it sort of cheapens it up a little bit. But like I said, those are the very few problems with the game, and for the most part, solid game. And again, you never have to use that feature anyway, so no skin off my back basically. But awesome game, best 3D Mario game since Mario 64, and it adds the functionality, the most fun aspects of the new Super Mario Bros. Game, which is the multiplayer, and in fact makes it even better, since you can have 4 different players all playing with their own functionality and characteristics. You can play off TV, a ton of different control schemes. There's just so much diversity in this game, and you can tell Nintendo was going for the gold and is trying to reach out to as many gamers as they could, and they nailed it. Excellent game, and I would say if you own the Wii U, run out and pick up this game right now. It's the best game on the console, aside from the 2D New Super Mario Bros. U. But if you play that, burn through it, looking for another Mario game, get this one. It brings it to the next level. It still sort of adheres to that fast-paced arcade style that's usually only there in the 2D stuff, but it sort of incorporates it into the more, fleshed out, aesthetically pleasing 3D Mario games. So in that sense, it's just a really polished, fully fleshed out, great Mario title. Gets the Warp Zone seal of approval, and I'm probably one of the biggest Mario fans you will meet, and I've played the series to death for the last 20 or so years. So if I like it, chances are you will like it as well. I give the game, in the single player mode only, I give it a solid 9 out of 10, and that's if you're not planning on playing multiplayer. If you are planning on playing multiplayer, I would give it a 9.5, just because it's a lot more fun. While you're not missing anything, if you don't play multiplayer, it does add a whole new level of fun. It sort of makes it feel like a competitive arcade game. You're competing with your friends, while at the same time you're still enjoying that Mario experience, going through all 8 worlds. And by the way, I will say the worlds are sort of generic, but at this, if you're playing the game, you're not going to care how generic they are. There's the typical desert, ice world, all that stuff. but it just looks so great in HD, and especially if you're playing multiplayer, it's so much fun to burn through. You're not going to think or care about how generic those are. So anyways, 9.0 for the single player, 9.5 for the multiplayer. Get this game. That's it, guys. First review in the books, and I'm going to be cranking out some more, particularly on the Nintendo front and the Wii U front, since that's the console of the day for me. I just got it, getting a lot of new Wii U games. Also going to do some retro reviews, since I'm a huge fan of a lot of retro games. So until then, guys, stay tuned. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed and or found this video useful. And until then, I'll catch you later.